Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Cologne, Charter of, from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Cologne, Charter of. This is an interesting Masonic document, originally written in Latin and purporting to have been issued in 1535. Its history, as given by those who first offered it to the public and who claim that it is authentic, is as follows. From the year 1519 to 1601, there existed in the city of Amsterdam in Holland a lodge whose name was Het Vredendal, or the Valley of Peace. In the later years, circumstances caused the lodge to be closed, but in 1637 it was revived by 4 of its surviving members under the name of Frederick's Vredendal, or Frederick's Valley of Peace. In this lodge, at the time of its restoration, there was found a chest bound with brass and secured by 3 locks and 3 seals, which, according to a protocol published on the 29th of January, 1637, contained the following documents. 1. The original warrant of constitution of the lodge, Het Vredendal, written in the English language. 2. A roll of all the members of the lodge from 1519 to 1601. 3. The original charter given to the Brotherhood at the city of Cologne, and which is now known among Masonic historians as the Charter of Cologne. It is not known how long these documents remained in possession of the lodge at Amsterdam, but they were subsequently remitted to the charge of Brother James von Vasner, Lord Opton, whose signature is appended to the last attestation of the Hague Register under the date of the 2nd of February, 1838. After his death, they remained among the papers of his family until 1790, when M. Walpenaer, one of his descendants, presented them to Brother von Butzelaer, who was then the Grand Master of the Lodges of Holland. Subsequently, they fell into the hands of some person, whose name is unknown, but who, in 1816, delivered them to Prince Frederick. There is a story that the prince received these documents accompanied by a letter, written in a female hand, and signed C, Child of V.J. In this letter, the writer states that she had found the documents among the papers of her father, who had received them from Mr. von Butzelaer. It is suspected that the authoress of the letter was the daughter of Brother von G. Linger, who was the successor of von Butzelaer as Grand Master of Holland. There is another version of the history which states that these documents had long been in the possession of the family of Wassenaar von Opti, by a member of which they were presented to von Butzelaer, who subsequently gave them to von Gielinger, with strict injunctions to preserve them until the restitution of the Orange Regency. The originals are now, or were very lately, deposited in the archives of a lodge at Namur on the Meuse, but copies of the charter were given to the fraternity under the following circumstances. In the year 1819, Prince Frederick of Nassau, who was then the Grand Master of the National Grand Lodge of Holland, contemplating a reformation in Masonry, addressed a circular on this subject to all the lodges under his jurisdiction, for the purpose of enlisting them in behalf of his project, and accompanied this circular with copies of the charter, which he had caused to be taken in facsimile, and also of the register of the Amsterdam Lodge, Valley of Peace, to which I have already referred as contained in the brass-mounted chest. A transcript of the original in the original Latin, with all its errors, was published in 1818 in the following. The document was also presented to the public in a German version in 1819 by Dr. Fred Haitman, but his translation has been proved by Lenning and others to be exceedingly incorrect. In 1821, Dr. Kauser published it in his celebrated work entitled The 3 Oldest Masonic Documents. It has been frequently published since in a German translation, in whole or in part, but is accessible to the English reader only in Burns' Sketch of the History of the Knights Templars, London 1840, in the English translation of Fandel's History of Freemasonry, and in the American Quarterly Review of Freemasonry, where it was published with copious notes by the author of the present work. P.J. Sheldon, a Dutch writer on the history of Freemasonry who had undoubtedly seen the original document, describes it as being written on parchment in Masonic cipher in the Latin language, the characters uninjured by time, and the subscription of the names not in cipher, but in ordinary cursive character. The Latin is that of the Middle Ages, and is distinguished by many incorrectly spelled words and frequent grammatical solecisms. Thus we find the following. Of the authenticity of this document, it is but fair to say that there are well-founded doubts among many Masonic writers. The learned antiquarians of the University of Leiden have testified that the paper on which the registry of the lodge at The Hague is written is the same kind that was used in Holland at the commencement of the 17th century, which purports to be its date, and the characters in which it is composed are of the same period. This registry, it will be remembered, refers to the Charter of Cologne as existing at that time, so that if the learned men of Leiden have not been deceived, the fraud, supposing that there is one in the Charter, must be more than 2 centuries old. Mr. Burns professes to have no faith in the document, and the editors of the Hermes at once declared it to be surreptitious. But the condemnation of Burns is too sweeping in its character, as it includes with the Charter all other German documents on Freemasonry, and the opinion of the editors of the Hermes must be taken with some grains of allowance, as they were at the time engaged in a controversy with the Grand Master of Holland, and in the defense of the high degrees whose claim to antiquity this charter would materially impair. Dr. Oliver, on the other hand, quotes it unreserved in his Landmarks as an historical document worthy of credit, and Regulini treats it as authentic. In Germany, the Masonic authorities of the highest reputation, such as Hauptmann, Merstoff, Klaus, and many others, have repudiated it as a spurious production, most probably of the beginning of the present century. Klaus objects to the document that customs are referred to in it that were not known in the rituals of initiation until 1731, that the higher degrees were nowhere known until 1725, that none of the 18 copied documents have been found, that the disclaimer against Templar Masonry was unnecessary in 1535, as no Templar degrees existed until 1741, and that some of the Latin expressions are not such as were likely to have been used, and a few other objections of a similar character. Bobrick, who published in 1840 the text, translation, and examination of the Cologne document, also advances some strong critical arguments against its authenticity. On the whole, the arguments to disprove the genuineness of the charter appear to be very convincing, and are strong enough to throw at least great doubt upon it as being anything else but a modern forgery. See Gould's History of Freemasonry, 496, where the question of the authenticity of the document is examined, and it is classified among Apocryphal Manuscripts. ELH. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.